Hello, hello. Welcome to tonight. I don't know if we'll have a big group. I know there's a lot of folks doing interviews and such, but always look forward to creating together. And we'll get our game on tonight. I'm not a gamer, so I'm probably the worst person to be doing this, but still have fun. We're a few minutes early, so we'll start at 7. Feel free to say hi in the chat. You just have to log into your YouTube account and let us know if you've had any experience with Scratch or Scratch Junior. I know some of us coded together with Scratch Junior. Hi there, folks. If you're just joining us, welcome to Appy Hour tonight. It's so weird for it being so dark. Since we started them in the spring, it's always been so light. We may be a smaller crew on tonight, but if you're joining us, just let us know that you're here. Let us know what your experiences are with coding, if you've used Scratch before. I just remembered I was going to use Mentimeter this time, so we'll have to do it next time. But yeah, looking forward to playing and exploring. I'm no expert, but this is something we often will do as an inquiry with kids. And it worked really well online in the spring. Jennifer, coding and music, there's so many possibilities for sure. I still remember the first time, one of the first times, I don't know if it's the first time, but kind of a whole group activity we did at West Acres around with a Makey Makey. And I'll never forget the kids coding the notes that they had just learned in music class, and they made themselves into a human piano. Not that we can do that right now, but it was just amazing to see how they brought all of those pieces together. Hello, Sharon. Nice to see ya. Thanks for joining in. I was saying I don't know if we'll have a big crew, a smaller crew, but yeah. The cool thing with Scratch is that there's so much in their library. Kids, users of all ages can share what they create, and you can look into their designs and to see kind of what they made, which is a cool way to kind of deconstruct the code. I also love the new video sensing feature in Scratch, so you can not just code it to respond to the key entry, but you can actually have it respond to your movements, which won't be tonight. We'll save that for another night. Hello, thanks for joining in. So for those that are just joining or just hopping on, we usually wait a few minutes as people are coming in. Say hi in the chat. You can just log in with your Google account. Andrew, you could do the session. You probably don't. Nothing. I want to, but we'll have fun together, and you can give us tips as we go along. Said the same thing to Dave earlier today. I shouldn't give it away. I know more people are joining in, so I'll be good and wait a few more minutes. Scratch has so many possibilities, and that's one of the reasons I love it. And we've already looked at Scratch Junior, which is a really nice open-ended language for the primary years. And I have used Scratch, the full version, with primary 2, with grade 2 and up, but it just gives us that next level for creating. So many possibilities. If you're just joining us, welcome to Appy Hour. This is a very messy, authentic learning, as Sharon and I think Sharon gets credit for the hashtag. So what we do in Appy Hour is we explore something, we play, and we create together. So I'll explain a little bit. We usually try to set the context. I'll show you some things, and then we start diving in, and we create together. So with Scratch, you do have to create on a computer. You can create on an iPad, but with the games, usually they use the keypad as a way to control. There's other ways around it. Scratch will work on a Chromebook. It's web-based, which is awesome. And I love that now you can use it on tablets as well, since it became web-based, and it fully functions online. So that's great. It's just a key. You're going to see when we code some of those pieces about keystrokes. You just have to be a bit more cognizant if you're coding on different devices. Probably better to log in on the website for today, just so that you can follow along. The app version, the Scratch Junior app, you can pull off some similar pieces. We've made interactive games, interactive touch style games, or we've made kind of like what you would see at a museum with kind of like an information diorama, digital interactive information diorama. But for what we're doing today, you probably want the website. Sorry. It's only 7:02. Today feels like I'm trying to rush for some reason. All right. So again, for those just joining us, thanks for joining Appy Hour. This is a chance for us to play and create together. So tonight we're exploring Scratch as a follow-up to Scratch Junior with one of the activities I love doing with kids, which is coding a game. There's immediate buy-in when you say you're coding a game, and kids just go into playing and want to level up and create really cool things. So it's always a fun way to kind of jump into the coding and have something purposeful. So as we go through tonight, we have a few pieces to kind of set the context. You're going to see my game, which is very, very lame. It's not very exciting. One that we actually coded with families last year for a coding night. And then after we deconstruct it, we'll walk you through those steps. And if we get through those steps, then we'll start leveling up and see how we can make the game even more interesting. Before we end tonight, we want to have a bit of a conversation linking back to those curriculum expectations and seeing if we can see some of those math expectations for us in Ontario pop up, whether they're the coding expectations or something different. All right, if you're just joining us, make sure you say hi, drop your name. As we go through, I'll pause at different points. We'll take ideas from the chat. One of these days I'll be really good at it. Usually it's a little messy. That's why we call it messy authentic learning. Okay, we're gonna dive in. So the vote was probably the tightest vote we've ever had. But for this week, we were looking at coding a game with Scratch. The reason for doing this was in the spring, I was chatting with some friends, Heather and Brandon, and I was supposed to visit their classroom, and with COVID, that kind of went out the window. So we were trying to think of what we could do, and we wanted to engage friends in a different way. Sometimes online learning, we can hit those, I say online learning, but it happens to us no matter where we're at. Sometimes we just need those activities that really invite our kids in or spark some more discussion and curiosity. So I created a series of little game provocations to help them out. So this is something that we did with them. Also something we did with the family coding night. It's a very, very, very simple game. Folks like Andrew are much better at coding in Scratch than I am. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. But we're going to walk you through some of those steps. And hopefully as we do it, we can learn a bit more about the program Scratch. We can talk about the possibilities, but also link to those math expectations that I know sometimes feel a bit overwhelming. So our goals for tonight. So I think a few folks said they're brand new to Scratch. Again, drop in the comments your experience with Scratch, how you feel about Scratch. If there's more experienced folks, we won't spend as much time, but we just want to give you an orientation so you know where you're at, how you can get in, how you can create. We'll take any questions there. We're going to look at the game and see if we can decide as a group what we have to break down. A lot of coding is taking a problem or taking a task and then breaking it down into its parts because each of those parts will have a set of code that goes with it. Hopefully you end up with an awesome rocking game that you want to show off. And then we'll end tonight with a little chat around the curriculum. Okay. So thank you to folks that are jumping in. And you don't have to register. So that's one of the first things. So Scratch is a web-based program. Back in the day, so the funny story, and Dave has heard this story before. Dave's another one that is probably a super avid Scratch guy. So back in the day, when I first was introduced to Scratch, the funny story is that I felt overwhelmed with it. And as I was trying to explore, I just gave it to one of my media kids, club kids, and said, can you please figure this out and bring us back some tips? So he actually led us in coding our own activities in Scratch that year. And I think that probably was now 15 years ago. So at that time, Scratch was a program and application. You had to install it. But over the years, they've always improved the program. Scratch Junior came out of those improvements, and the web-based version came out of those improvements. So it's awesome that we can now interact online. One of the downsides is a lot of times we think we have to create an account. You can set up teacher accounts, so you can set up kid accounts. But just know that as we're creating, if the accounts are overwhelming, especially if it's your first time and you're not sure if the kids are going to like it and you just want to start exploring, you can save your programs to your computer and load them back up. So if there's issues with your board around signing kids up, again, if you're not sure or you just want to get a kid right into creating, that option is available for you. It's a free account, so signing up makes it easier. It also means that you can save your projects, create studios with collections of projects, lots of other goodness. So for those that did Scratch Junior with us, you're going to see that this feels a bit more overwhelming. So some people are brand new. Some people have more experience. So it's really, we're just going to go back and forth. Drop those questions in the comments as we go along. That's why I'm staring very closely at my phone. Obviously, I probably need glasses because I keep squinting. But we'll keep checking in with those questions as we get chatting. Andrew made a good point. The Educator Account is really an awesome piece if you're diving into this with your students. You're able to help students with their passwords and manage accounts that way. The studios are easier too, so you can create a studio for all your creations and that piece. Okay, scratch.mit.edu is the website. You're on the page, lots of pieces here. It's hard sometimes because the kids will go straight into exploring what other people have created. So we usually jump right into create. Just one piece before we keep going is to remember that as a teacher, you have the ideas page. So maybe you're not tackling coding with everyone just yet. You have a couple of friends that want to do it for a passion project. You can send them to the ideas page, and I'm a big fan of their PDFs. Great little activity cards or challenge cards to have that walk students through. And to be honest, that's usually how I've started exploring. I like them better than the step-by-step activity guides. But lots of pieces there to kind of get you started. I want to show you my game for tonight because I'm hoping that we can look at the game and see what the pieces are, or what you think the pieces are. So just a note that when you're creating in Scratch, we're coding games, but you really can create anything. So one of the easiest ways to get started is to code an interactive. If you've done that, drop it into the chat. So a lot of us have done sorry, just having a couple of problems with the link. I'm not sure if it's stopped folks from entering. I'm not sure. Sorry, David. I've not had that problem before. We've had it block us before, but we haven't had some people get in. Sorry. Technical glitches. Now, hopefully my brain remembers where we're at. So one of the easiest ways is just to code a story. These were some friends coding a little story in French, a little winter scene. In addition to that, I've really loved Makey Makey, so I find I go to Scratch a lot to code for Makey Makey. So we've even done physical exit tickets for some of our family events. And I love playing with the video sensing, and we were exploring some different interactive art moments because I love Moment Factory and all of their creations. The games, to me, I think, one, there's just so much rich math conversations that come into play when we're coding games. I think the other piece is it's just their context. A lot of our kids are immersed in games, so it's a great way to explore the text form. And there's also a lot of opportunities for us to give them starting points and for them to really take it where they want to go. Awesome, David. You got in. Dave got in. Woo. So lots of possibilities. Tonight's game is just going to be an easy chase game. Nothing too fancy. Like we said, I feel like I have to put a disclaimer on there. So we're going to look at the game and we're going to try to deconstruct what do you think what elements would we need to set up this game? Does that sound okay? Again, we said code a lot of times is taking a task and then breaking it down into its smaller parts. So this is my very sad game. We use the green flag to start. I can use my arrows, and I should have put those instructions in, but again. So I'm going to be chasing. I'm using my arrows to chase the little orange fish as I'm going along. So what do you think are the elements we would need to code to make our game work? Can you drop them into the chat? You didn't know you were doing homework tonight. Sorry. Feels like a test question. It's not meant to be. Hopefully it's a fun way to do it. And I'll give my thinking in a few minutes. So any ideas, if we look at our game, of what you think we need to code? What do we think we need to code to make this game possible? We'll give you a little hint in a minute, 30 seconds, if I can be patient enough. One little trick in Scratch is we can see inside to see the code. You can maybe see some of those pieces, those sparks. They all came up at once. So, great point. We need that movement for both of our characters. And David pointed out we need a background and sprites. Sprites are what Scratch calls characters. I usually say characters when I'm coding just so kids understand they're similar to those elements of a story. And we want a setting and a character that makes sense, but they are called sprites. Maybe Andrew or David know why. Dave know why. Directions connected to the keys, right? We need to code. Now, both of our characters move differently, and this is one of those things, we talked about it in Scratch Junior, that's weird for kids with code, is that each character or each object has its own set of commands. So our fish is moving randomly. So it's moving, we have a random setting that it's doing forever, where our shark is moving with the arrows. So each of those will be a different set of codes. Catherine figured out that random movement. Yeah, so as much as we're talking about that movement, we also have to talk about the interaction. So we need to put a set of code that talks about when those two characters meet, and that's our if-then. So it's kind of a consequence. So if this happens, then do this. And you can't hear it, but we have a couple things that happen there. It's not like I've known you for 20 years, Dave, eh? Do I keep calling you Dave? Dave and I went to Teachers College together, if anybody's wondering, and I don't know why I'm calling him by the wrong name today. So the last thing is we want to keep score. So that's why we see that up in the top. So we need a variable, and we need to decide the math for that score. I always love how when we do this with kids, they come up with some really crazy math. One kid was making the score change by 20 every time they touched, just because he wanted a really high score. But even that concept, that conversation with math is pretty cool. Okay, so let's get into coding our own game. So if you're on Scratch, we're going to go to the Create button. And what we're going to have is a nice blank canvas. So as you look, you're going to see we have a couple pieces. We have our work area here in the middle of the page where we're going to be putting our code blocks. You can see your stage where the story or where a game is taking place. Down here we can see our sprite, so there's our character, and we'll come to that in a minute. And over here on the side, we have our background. So that's what's behind us. So what we want to do first is we want to, sorry, I had it over here. This is just my flow. Others that have experience with Scratch, let me know if you have a better workflow or if there's things you do differently. I always would get them to focus on the characters in the setting and to think about how they want that interaction to happen. Then I'll code my movement. Then I'll code that interaction between those two characters. And then I add the score last, just because I find score is the hardest part. This is usually the first game we code together or the first challenge we would put out. And then we do different ones and keep adding to the complexity of the code. So we'll do jumping or catching games, lots of different ones. Okay, so first things first, I want two objects. I need somebody that's being the chaser and somebody that's trying to escape. And I need a backdrop or a setting. So for the arts friends in a group, you can actually draw and design anything you want in here. So just know you have that freedom, but we're going to use the search button to actually look for something that makes sense. So I think I'm going to go to the forest, and I'm going to find two characters that belong to the forest. The cat doesn't really make sense. So I'm going to get rid of that with a little trash can. And then I can go down here where I see the little cat, again, I'm using that magnifying glass to search. I'm going to try to find two characters that will make sense. Notice you have your categories along the top. Just makes that searching a little bit easier. So I'm going to go see animals. I like the hedgehog. There's my hedgehog. And maybe the hedgehog's going to chase what would make sense for a game. Maybe we'll go look for a berry. I don't know if that's what they eat. This is very unscientific today. So we'll have to work on that. My strawberry right now is the same size as a hedgehog. That may make my game a little too easy. Great conversations about probability. So over here where I see size, I'm going to change that and I'm going to shrink it because I want it to be a bit harder to go catch. Okay, I'll do it again. I'm going to close my characters off. So down here on the sprite, if you go to that magnifying glass to search, there's two ways. You can just keep scrolling to find different sprites for your game, but just two tips that are helpful. One is to use your headings. So I know a hedgehog will be under my animals. It will just make it a bit easier. So I can find my hedgehog. And if I click the plus sign and go search again, I want a berry. I'm not sure where it is. So in the search box up here, I can type what I'm looking for and it will pop up those sprites. Now, once I have a sprite, I have a little size box with 100 for 100%. I can shrink that down so that my game, I can really play with that probability in the game. So thanks, Andrew, for letting us know why sprites. It goes back to the Texas Instruments. Oh my goodness. There you go. Learn new things every day. Always learn things from Happy Hour from folks. Glad that you like that flow too. So let us know when you're good to go. Just give us a little why. Yes, if you have your background and your sprites and you're happy with their sizes, and then we'll start tackling that code. If you have more questions, drop them into the chat too. I know we go fast, but just ask and we'll revisit. We'll take another look. That's the joys of Happy Hour. I'm not sure. No search box, Jennifer? So once you choose a sprite, you don't get this box, eh? To be honest, it's more of a thing I model for people. I'm not sure why it's not popping up. You could just use your categories to help you find sprites. Like I said, you can scroll down. It's just there's so many that sometimes I feel a little overwhelmed. So we have a couple of people that dropped there. Yes, they're ready to go. So again, if we go back to our flow, we have our character and our setting, our stage and our sprites. So now our goal is to go and code that movement. Hopefully everybody has their character and sprite. We'll keep it up on the screen as we go, so I think we'll be okay. So yeah, like Dave said, if you click on the cat here, the little cat in the character setting, you're going to go to the magnifying glass right above it. It won't pop up till you click on it. And then the magnifying glass gives you all of the characters that Scratch has preloaded, but you can also design your own. You can click on that star and you just get a surprise, or you can upload your own designs. Okay, so I have my two characters. My hedgehog's going to be the one chasing, so I'm going to control the hedgehog with my keys, my left, right, up, and down. And then we also want the strawberry to continuously go to a random spot. So let's start with the hedgehog. So every code needs a start, and we find those in events. Now, we can have code that starts when we hit the green flag, or we can have code that starts when we push a button. So in a game, if I want to control my hedgehog by moving, I want code that starts when I press a button. So I'm going to take this code here. And again, this is just my workflow. It will be cool to see if others have a different one. So I know I'm going to need 4 arrows for direction. So I'm actually going to take 4 of those 4 of those buttons and brought them over. And I'm going to click on that little drop down because I need this to be, I'm going to go right first. Right arrow, left arrow, up arrow, and down arrow. So one of the cool things with Scratch is that you're working on a plane, and as I move my hedgehog, notice my X and my Y here. So you're going to see that those numbers change as I move my character around. So as we move, we're going to be using movements within that plane. So all of those movements are going to be under my blue. Scratch Junior friends see those commonalities. So I'm going to move my hedgehog 10. Let's try that out. Oh, he's moving. Can you guess what we need to do to make him go left? We need the opposite of 10, so we need to take 10 away. So let's test it out. We're going to go right, and we're going to go left. Now, when you get fancy with code, you can start moving your character in that direction. I always mess that up, so we won't do that today. Now, as much as we're moving 10, when you move 10 steps, it automatically does the, it moves on the x-axis. So we can also make that movement on the y-axis. So if I'm going up, I can change my y by 10. And if I'm going down, you guessed it, we need the opposite. So let's test it out. There's my down arrow, my up arrow, my right arrow, my left arrow. It's really up to you guys what you're talking about in math, what conversations you want to have. I usually just do move 10, but we could even be changing our X if we're doing a lot of graphing and really want to help reinforce those axes. To be honest, X and Y will be helpful for us later on. But if I'm dealing just with some grade 2s or 3s that are just starting to get into Scratch, we may not be tackling that yet. So let us know when your code is good to go and your character is moving in all 4 directions with the arrow. Jessica, I love that you found the unicorn. It's a very, it's a fan favorite in the classroom. When you're good to go again, just drop a Y in the chat if you have questions. Can I zoom in on the code? Great question. I zoomed in too much, sorry. Got zealous there. There we go. I'll move these down. How's that? Dave, Lisa's trying to join in. I don't know if you had a trick. Did you just need to refresh the page? I don't know what it's doing today. So weird. Lisa, maybe just try refreshing the page or trying the link again. It was doing that to Dave too. Oh, Andrew, that's hilarious. I never use that. I love that. Thanks for showing me something new tonight. There you go. I never use that little login. That's perfect. So Lisa, Dave said, I don't know why I keep saying David tonight. Whoa. Dave said he just had to refresh or try the link again. It took forever. Weird. I didn't do anything different this time. Oh, quit. So quit YouTube and then come back in. Maybe YouTube's having a sluggish night. All right. So just checking our time, and we're going to add another layer of code on here. So hopefully we're okay with our bit here. We have our 4 arrows in our 4 directions. The next thing we need to do is we need to get our strawberry to move around to random places. So this code's really easy. I want it to start right when the game starts, so right when the green flag starts. So I'm going to go to my events and choose that when the flag is clicked. Remember, every piece of code needs that start. So we have to tell it when it's going to kind of jump in. So then I'm going to go to my motions, and I'm going to look for something that goes to a random position. Let's try this one. And if I click it, I can test it out. So that's cool, but it doesn't really move. I like the movement. So that glide, let's try that. That gives me more of that movement. So it glides to a random position. But right now it's only gliding to one random position, and I want it to continually glide to a random position. So in my controls, those are anything that I want to, any conditions, I guess you could say. Again, Dave and Andrew may have better words for that. But anything I want to kind of, any kind of settings I want to put on. So I want this to happen forever. So as long as the game's on, as long as that green flag is clicked, I want that strawberry just to keep going to random places. So let's test it out. There we go. Awesome. Now I'm finding it's moving a bit too fast, so I can change that timing. And again, this is where we're playing with numbers, we're exploring. You can even get those decimals happening in there. And we can see if we like that better. I already know I like 2 seconds, but I've played a bit more. That's it, Andrew. Control structure. Hopefully, Lisa, you got in. So friends, right now we should have a background. We should have our 2 sprites, somebody chasing and somebody floating. Let us know in the chat. Just give us a little Y, a little thumbs up, a little I'm ready. So we know where. Jennifer, remember that your commands are on 2 different pages. So the hedgehog, when I click on the hedgehog, I'll see the hedgehog's code. And when I see the strawberry, I'll see the strawberry's code. Does that make sense? So the hedgehog has his own set of commands, and the strawberry has their sets of commands. Think if you're playing a game of, if you're playing a game of tag, the person that's it is deciding where they go, and then all the people that are trying to get away from the person that's it, they all get to decide where they're going. So each character in your game has its own set of code. Catherine, love that. That's the one thing, Dave made a great point. A lot of these concepts, we did them last year with grade 4. I've done this game actually with grade 2 even. It was a little procedural, but that's okay. But the coding expectations in the curriculum, they're surpassing them at that point. So these are really intermediate and junior, later in junior kind of code concepts, but the kids are great with them. So I think it definitely addresses a lot of those elements. Okay. Yeah, so over here in the corner, and we saw that with Scratch Junior too, you can kind of see what character you're on. It happens to everybody. When I do this with a class, there's at least one kid that has coded the wrong character. So you can just bring your code back to recycle it and start again. It's always one of those bummers, but what can you do? Okay, if we're okay, we're going to do the next set of code. So remember, we've done our characters and setting, we've done our movement, so now we have to code that interaction. We need to say that if the hedgehog is touching the strawberry, I want something to happen. So to do that, we need an if-then statement. So we need a piece of code that will articulate that interaction. Now I'm going to put that onto the hedgehog. I don't know if other people that have coded before have a preference. I don't know why I do it this way. Maybe it's just the way I learned. So these things, my arrows are going to be there no matter what, but I want the interaction to happen from the beginning of the game. So from the beginning of the game, I want to say, if the hedgehog is touching the strawberry, I want you to play a sound, and then eventually I want you to change the code, change the score. So I'm going to do when the green flag is clicked, and I'm going to go into control because, again, I remember I'm talking about those relationships or those settings, and I'm going to use one of these if-then statements. And you can kind of see over here how you get this little, I don't even know what shape it is. I keep saying pentagon, but that is not the right shape. I haven't had enough Coca-Cola tonight, I guess. So right now, I have an if-then statement. So I have to define the relationship. So remember how I said touching? That's where your sensing comes into play. So I can say, I get all these little shapes that fit in, and I can say, if the hedgehog is touching the strawberry, then I want to play a sound. And I love that there's already cool sounds. That makes sense. The hedgehog doesn't have a cool chomp sound. Pop. All right. I can record my own sound. Oh, how could I not think of a hexagon right now? That's comical. It's Wednesday night. I'm blaming Wednesday night. I can go into my sounds as well, and I can go look for sounds. So you can, again, you can just do this quickly and just let them pick up that sound that's already there, or you can go in and you can fine tune, you can find a sound that makes sense to you. So again, we have those different groups. So we can go into effects, and there's a bite sound, so I think I'll like that one. So my code, I'm gonna make sure it says bite. The sky's the limit. We used Scratch just to explore sound with a grade 4 class because we could record our own sounds and manipulate the sound waves. So many possibilities just in that sound panel. But for today, we're going to keep it limited just because I'm looking at the time. So to recap, we have a character, we have the background, we have our two sprites. We know they both move, and now with our newest set of code, and we'll zoom in on that code, we should hear a sound when our two characters interact. One little trick, if you're not hearing it yet, make sure you stop your code and start your code again. Because remember, we've said that it won't start till we push the green flag. Again, drop a yes, drop a cool comment to let us know that you're good to go. So Catherine, if you want to search for sounds, up here on the top, right now we're in code, but you have costumes. That's the different outfits. So you can kind of see our hedgehog has different costumes. And then beside that is sounds. And everything in Scratch kind of takes that same format. So down here on the plus sign with the little audio symbol, I can search, and I'm able to get a database of sounds that are already included. Again, you can go to the microphone and record your own sound. You could upload a sound. So we've used Scratch to do makey interactive art. So for that, the kids may have created soundscapes in GarageBand that we want to bring in. Hope that made sense. Once you have a sound here on your sound panel, then in your code, you're able to choose between them. Perfect. I want to make sure mine works. I can't hear the sound though, so it won't, but I'll be able to see the code light up, hopefully. Helps if I'm not on it. We'll be able to see on the next one. Now, one of the things you may notice is that your sound only plays once. Remember what we had to do to the strawberry when we wanted it to do it forever? So in my controls, I want to make sure. I don't know. I'm now rethinking my code. Andrew and Dave can help us out. I'm going to go look at my other code to double check. Oh, operation games with Makey Makey. That's a great idea. And this is a moment where we say everybody cheats with code. Not cheats. Cheats isn't the right word. We always go back and double check. Coding is also a great opportunity to revisit and make changes. One of my favorite pieces, I do need the forever, right? I just had a moment where I thought, so this is my cheat. Sometimes I'll go back to other projects to go see what code I used. Sometimes it's just talking it through. One of my favorite moments, probably was about 10 years ago now, was hanging out with some grade threes, and we just sat there and problem solved their code that was stuck. And such a rich conversation. It was awesome. Okay. Are we all good? You're still with me? Andrew's good. Catherine got her sound in. We're so close. I'm glad I think we're gonna be okay with time-wise. We're gonna do the next piece, which is adding the score. So what if you do have questions? Can you and your item transfer? Can you explain that, Jennifer? What do you mean? Can you transfer the code? You are able to duplicate code to make it faster. I don't know if you can duplicate, the guys may be able to better, I can add blocks to my blocks and then maybe give them to another character. I don't know. Oh, no, each character has its own set of sounds. So you just need to make sure they're on each character's sound panel. Hopefully I answered that. I don't know if I did. Oh, how'd you make the balloon pop? So if you had a balloon pop, then you're going to not just change. So I made a sound here, but I could also change the look. So right now my hedgehog, when he gets the strawberry, he just is doing that bite sound. But in my purple looks, I can also switch the costume. Costumes just get a little more interesting because then I'm going to do that costume C. Because you have to reset those costumes then. So I'll switch the costume here back to A. I don't know if that will work. We'll have to test it out. So those costumes is how you're able to switch them up, and you're able to duplicate a costume and draw it yourself. So lots of design possibilities, especially for the arts friends in the group. Okay, so I have my code here. We'll leave that on. Why not? One thing I found, and I don't know what others are finding, is especially when it plays a sound, it plays it way too often. So I'll always go into my control and put a little wait 1 second, so that it doesn't make the score super high. They can't just sit there in one spot, and I don't hear that ringing over and over again. Just one of my tips. So now we want to get our score in. So there's a couple things. We need to go to our variables, and we need to set something that will keep score. So I can make a variable. We're going to call this score. And so we now have a little score box up in the corner. We also have orange score code blocks. So I already said when my character is touching the strawberry, it makes a sound. Now I don't want it to just make a sound. I also want it to change the score. So I'm going to come down here and say change score by 1. My problem though is I also need to make sure, well, let's test it out and see what happens. So let's see if we go chase after the strawberry. There, oh, my score changed. Awesome. It's going to be 2. Oh, it's not just changing, so that's good. It's using that 1 second. I'm going to keep chasing it. Look at his nose goes up and down. I'm liking that. That's cute. Can I add a game over block? We will do that. I'm not always great at the game over blocks, but better when it's a score-based game. This one's harder because you maybe would want to put a time limit on it. So you can kind of see how that score changes. But when I play the game again, let's see, oh, it's still at 15. So I need to make sure that at the beginning of my game, my score is set to 0. So let's see. Oh, there we go, 0. And I'm going to go chasing. I'll go chase it again. This strawberry is moving way too fast. I think the probability here is a bit too hard. I may have to change that speed. And again, this is where testing that code is vital. So again, I have set my score to 0 at the beginning, and then I change my score whenever they interact. Give us a little why if you have a game. We've done it. We've done all 4 steps. We chose our characters and our backgrounds. We made them move. We interacted. We coded for that interaction. And we set a score. So you have a game. If you're following, I'm just going to leave this code block here. For Dave and Andrew, you can pipe in, you may have another strategy or I may be doing it wrong. So for me, I would put, if I wanted a time limit, look at you guys all rocking it. So when I have my green flag, I am going to go into control. I think I could put it, we'll see if this works, 10 seconds. And then in control, I have a stop all code block. Oh no, Jessica. That unicorn game is meant to be. That is one of the benefits of setting up accounts. It will autosave. Where if you haven't set up an account, you want to name your project. And then again, you can go file and save to your computer. So with this game, I wouldn't necessarily want a score limit. I guess I could do a score limit. So maybe the goal is to catch 10 and then we give them a congratulations. So let's do that. So when the thing is, we are going to wait until, and we're going to wait until, and I'm going to use these operators. The operators are all math. So I'm going to say blank equals. So I want the score to be 15. So I'm going to go make sure that I go to my orange, and I'm going to say, I'm going to wait until the score is 15. Then I'm going to put a little looks, and I'm going to say, congrats, you won. And then I'm going to go into control and stop all. Hope I did that right. Let's try it. Okay, here we go. We're going to get, how many points did I say again? It's off the screen. Let's zoom out. Oh my goodness, I only have one so far. I shouldn't have said 15. But that same code block that we just looked at, those settings of those if-then settings or those wait until settings allow us to create different levels, allow us to add different elements. So maybe once our score gets to 20, we want to put in something that will take away points. Why did I not say 10? This always happens, and this is why you test out your code, because 15 is just way too long. It feels like the never ending. And I made that strawberry way too small. Oh, it was waiting for me too. Hey, there we go. So it stopped all my scorekeeping because that's part of the code. How are we doing? Anybody enjoying their game so far? Like we said, the sky's the limit here. Really, I could be adding more objects, so there's more things to chase. I could be putting something that gets in the way, that takes away points. It's all how we're playing with these numbers and how we're playing with the probability of the game. So there's so many pieces there that can get really interesting. So that's why when we were creating with our friends last year, we started with a chase game because it kind of really set the tone for the set of code that they would need. But then we put in different challenges. So we did a catch game. My food truck was trying to catch the tacos. We had a hedgehog jumping for strawberries. So this was a bit different in that so for this one, I made it more a jumping game. So he can't move up and down. The space bar is what helps him jump. And I try to put them in different areas and those bits. And then the last one, we were looking at more of a gem collection game. So each game kind of added upon itself. And I forgot to put the gem collection game in here. And that game, we added several different levels. Andrew, I was not clever enough to think about creating a studio for us to share our projects. But maybe we can show people how to share. So if you have your project and you've signed in, you can save, and if you're willing to, you can click share. Sharing now means that your game can be played by others. Like I said, I'm always terrible at this. How fast can you catch the strawberry? Will you get a use the arrow keys to move the hedgehog? I'm always terrible about that. On the bottom there, you can see you can add to Studio. That's what I was just showing you. Or you can even just copy the link. And this link will let us play your amazing creations. Okay, so just for, I'm going to go back to the score part just a little bit. So let's go inside. So if you have all the interaction, you've done the hardest part. So for your score, you're using a variable. So under your variables, you're going to make sure you have one. You can use my variable. You can turn it on with a little check mark, or you can make your own if you want to call it something different. And then we're going to change that score or that variable by 1 every time we interact. So you can see in my code block here, I said if they're touching, we're going to play the sound, switch the costume, and then change the score. That also meant that I needed to set the score at the beginning to 0 so that the game resets each time. This one right here. Thanks, Andrew. So you just need to click to turn it on. Hey! Awesome. There you go. So yeah, that variable has to be on or else you won't be able to see it. So you don't know that it's working. Friends, 5 minutes left. We just wanted to quickly look at that curriculum expectations. Keep dropping your questions. What kind of stood out to you as you were exploring? Can you see it connecting to those math expectations that we now have for coding? Did you see any other math expectations kind of pop up? How can you see using it in your program? And sometimes when we code, it's just fun to get a grasp, even if with your own kids. You may want to use Scratch Junior or you're still thinking about it. It's just I love playing the games just because it's a way to play and be immersed in code myself. I think it's one of those languages that often feels intimidating, but it's through play that we really get to understand how it all works. Catherine, I love that you figured out how to make them walk. Those costumes and the movements have to go together, right? So I changed my hedgehog's costume here, but I could have been changing my hedgehog's costumes as they're moving. So that could have been one way to get them going. And there's a lot of really cool characters that have those movements built in. Yeah, Jennifer, I think the X and Y axis that looking at that plane, it's often an abstract concept for kids. So it's a great way to explore those elements. I'll put the expectations back up so you can take a closer look. So to Dave's point earlier, when we look at the grade 7 code, there's pieces as we got coding with the game about making our code more efficient. So my code right now has 4 separate code blocks for moving. There's more efficient ways to make that code. So that's what that would be meaning. So that variable for keeping score, other subprograms with those if-then statements, I think we have a lot of that happening. I think you see that mostly with grade 5, right? Conditional statements. So that if-then is really that conditional statement, I think. That's how I interpreted it, but maybe I interpreted it wrong. That's awesome. Yeah, kids, it's funny how fast they jump into these things, right? But Jennifer, isn't it a great way to visualize those integers and those equal movements, those equal reactions, if you will? Dave, I love that idea of giving them different options to design a game. I know last year we created a choice board around gaming, and that was kind of the framework that we used as we were exploring. So one row was no tech ideas. The second row was kind of just beginning tech, even things like Sketch Nation. And then the last one was kind of diving deep into some of the coding options. Coding in CoSpaces is so much fun. So for those that haven't explored CoSpaces before, I don't think we've ever put it as an Appy Hour option. So maybe we'll have to add it to the next list. but CoSpaces has awesome opportunities. Metaverse is too hard for my brain. So Lisa has a great question. So when you post your game, others can look inside your code. So I'm just going to I'm going to open another window if that's okay, just so we can see here. I know our time officially is over, but we'll show you one more thing. So whenever you're in any of your games, or even in somebody else's game, I'll just show you from somebody else's, you're able to see inside the code. So this will let you see all of the code blocks that they used. Sorry for the sluggish Wi-Fi. At least it's sluggish now and not earlier. And you can see, wow, there's a lot of code happening. I think this looks like something where you get to design elements. Now, if I like it, I also have that green button so I can remix it. I just find sometimes kids find the craziest stuff in the galleries. And that is part of our math expectations, is being able to read and alter existing code. So taking somebody else's and remixing it. This would probably be a bit too hard for them to sort through if they haven't explored just yet. So by default, your game won't show the code. They have to click on that see inside to be able to see it. I hope that helps. Well, thank you guys for joining us on a very busy week. We seem to have picked the worst possible weeks with this flow, overlapping with report cards and interviews and all that loveliness. But it was fun just hanging out. Yeah, and I definitely love that they can play and explore and see some of the different options that are out there and then get to design themselves. But I know we're over our time. Feel free to stay on if you have more questions or more comments. Thank you for joining us. If you have a suggestion for our next Appy Hour, we have one the last week of November, and then we'll do one maybe the second week of December before we take a break. So if you have suggestions, CoSpaces may make it on that list again. Or if you want to do something different with Scratch, we can do that too. Glad you had fun. That's the goal with Appy Hour. It's not always very glamorous. Case in point, my messed up words there. But it's always fun to play and see what people create. Yes, report cards are over. We get a bit of a breathing space. Yeah, this one looks way too hard for me. So that's one of the reasons it could be cool, Lisa, to create a studio or to curate 4 or 5 games that you know are game types that they could explore. Or having them create 1 or 2 games like we did tonight, like a catch game and a hop game, a chase game and a catch game, and then go check out how other people made games. So they could see how their code could be layered. I think that may give them some more, that may support them in being successful in that exploration. Jennifer, no, I won't stop you from the cocktails if it helps. Share your games with us on Twitter. I guess we should have a hashtag for Appy Hour, but we don't. We'll have to get there soon. Thanks for joining us. Hope you have a great rest of the week. We'll see you guys online. Good night, everyone.